Lucky. That night, we all ate dinner at home, at the table, because Grandpa Park was visiting. It was real dinner, too. Steak and potatoes, and even a salad with homemade dressing, not from a bottle or anything. Mom made it, and Dad set the table, which was usually my job. When I told Dad that, he said I could be in charge of loading the dishwasher instead, and that made me grouchy, because I hate loading the dishwasher. But I tried not to look grouchy in front of Grandpa Park. Grandpa Park doesn't like it when you're grouchy. "So," Grandpa Park said after he bit into his steak, "Albie." He was talking with his mouth full, which I thought was something that was rude, but I guess when you're a grandpa you can do whatever you want. I cut my own steak and tried not to look at the chewed up food in his mouth. "How's Mountford?" My eyeballs shot up from my plate, but Mom answered before I could say anything. "Albie doesn't go to Mountford anymore, Appa," she told him. "You know that." Appa is what she calls Grandpa Park because that's Korean for Dad. I asked him once if I should call him Harabuji because that's what I thought Mom said the Korean word was for grandfather. But Grandpa Park just swirled his glass with a clink of ice and said, "Not with that accent." So I stick to Grandpa. "I most certainly did not know that," Grandpa Park said, stabbing at a piece of steak with his knife. He didn't even bother with the fork, just lifted the piece to his mouth and ate it right off the tip of his knife. "If I knew that, I wouldn't have asked about it. So?" He turned to look straight at me, and I shifted my stare down to my salad, which suddenly I didn't want at all. "You're no longer going to the fancy private school your parents have been struggling so hard to pay for the last 6 years? Why the heck not?" Mom's eyes went big. "Appa!" she said. But Grandpa Park kept staring at me. I could tell he was staring at me even though I was still looking at my salad, not at him. I could feel his eyeballs boring into my brain. "Well," Grandpa Park said. "Mom, next time can you put tomatoes in the salad?" I asked. "I really like tomatoes." Mom put a hand on my arm. "Of course, honey," she said. "I'll be sure to remember." Across the table, Dad set down his glass of wine. "We thought Albie would benefit more from going to a new school," he told Grandpa Park. "Mountford wasn't meeting his needs." Grandpa Park snorted. "He got kicked out," he said. And the way he said it, it was like he knew it was a fact, like he knew it would happen all along, and he wasn't surprised at all. He maybe even thought it was sort of funny. "I don't want to go to that stupid school anyway," I said, because I didn't. But then I slapped my hand over my mouth because I was pretty sure I'd just yelled at Grandpa Park, and that was definitely something I was not supposed to do. "Albie, sweetie," Mom said, her hand still on my arm, "why don't you go do your reading for your reading log?" "I'm still eating," I told her. "For your information," Dad told Grandpa Park, and he was glaring now, the kind of glaring I'd only seen him do when he was on the phone yelling at the cable guy. "PS 183 is an excellent school with a progressive philosophy on student—" Grandpa Park snorted again. "A public school," he said. "You're sending my grandson to a public school?" "Albie," Mom said, squeezing my arm a little harder. Too hard. "Go do your reading." Her eyes were focused on my grandpa. "Why bother?" Grandpa Park said. He pushed his plate aside and reached for his glass. He wasn't having wine like Mom and Dad. His glass was filled with the red-brown drink he always had when he visited, the one Mom kept up high in the cupboard just for him. "Why not just throw him in a ditch now and be done with it? That's where he'll end up at this rate." "Appa!" Mom stood up then, her eyes angry on fire, and she practically pulled me out of my chair. "Come on, Albie, I think dinner's over." "But," I said, because I'd only had 2 bites and I was still hungry, but I didn't really want to stay either, so I followed her down the hall. "Frankly," I heard my dad say as Mom dragged me away, "I don't appreciate the way you've been speaking to my son, Shin." "Oh, really?" I heard Grandpa Park reply, "because I don't appreciate the way you've been misraising my grandson." That's when Mom slammed shut my bedroom door. She plopped herself down next to me on the bed and put her head in her hands. I pulled the hatchet book Mom gave me for my birthday off the table next to my bed, and I held it out to her because I thought she wanted to help me with my reading, and that was why she came into my room, but she didn't take it. Instead, she sighed. I sighed too. "I'm sorry about that, Albie," she said. She was looking at the closed door. The way she narrowed her eyes at it, you would have thought it was the door she was mad at. "It's okay," I said. I didn't want her to feel bad. Anyway, it wasn't like I was upset or anything. I was pretty sure Grandpa Park was wrong about me ending up in a ditch. "No," she said, still glaring at the door. "It's not." I nodded, and I waited for her to tell me the stuff she usually told me when Grandpa Park came over, about him not really meaning all the stuff he said sometimes, and about him loving me so much, and that was why he could be so hard on me, and about him having a hard life growing up, and so that was why he was gruff. Mom said the word gruff a lot when she was talking about Grandpa Park. "Your grandfather," she let out another long breath of air. "Your grandfather is not a very nice man." I sort of laughed when she said that because at first I thought she was joking. That definitely wasn't something you were supposed to say about your own dad. But when I looked at her face, I could tell she wasn't joking. She closed her eyes and shook her head. "Sometimes I could just..." She balled her hands up into little fists in her lap. I hugged her then, around the side. I wasn't sure why I did it. Usually it was moms who hug their kids, not the other way around, but I thought right then that maybe she needed a hug more than I did. She buried her nose deep in my hair. "I love you so much, Albie," she said softly. Maybe my mom didn't always know how to be the best mother, like she said, but at least she was trying. Maybe that was the important thing. "I love you too," I told her. "You are caring and thoughtful and good." Mom pulled away to look at me. Her eyes were wet. She smiled at me as she pushed the hair off my forehead, just gazing at my face. When she spoke, her voice was soft. "Sometimes I wonder how I ever got so lucky to get a son like you, Albie." Lucky. That's what she said. I hugged her again around the side. Maybe it was silly to not be upset at all when I could still hear my dad and Grandpa Park shouting at each other in the dining room. Maybe I should have been, but I wasn't. Right then, I felt pretty lucky, too.